Honey, wake up. I just had a dream. I was the Messianic Torah dude, and this week's Torah portion was VaYeshev.
What is wrong with you? It's 3 in the morning.
VaYeshev, and he dwelt, is located in Genesis chapter 37, verse 1 through Genesis chapter 40, verse 23. And it tells the story of the early life of Joseph. Joseph was the youngest of the sons of Israel, and he was the favorite for a number of reasons. One, he was the son of Rachel, which was the favorite wife. Another reason is because he was the son born to Israel in his old age. So, we begin looking at the life of Joseph here in chapter 37, verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and his words. Then he dreamed another dream, and he told it to his brothers, and he said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing to me." But when he told this to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. He had a great destiny, but with that great destiny came a great ego. He was full of pride. He told his brothers, "Look, how great I'm going to be. Not only am I the favorite son, not only am I from the favorite mother, but also I am going to be destined to rule over all of you." Now, in the traditional family structure of the time, the youngest son was the least important, the least noteworthy, the least honorable. And yet here he is saying, "I, the youngest son, am going to be greater than all of you." We had an earlier story before this verse where he had essentially tattled on his brothers, and his father rewarded him by giving him a fancy coat. We don't know specifically from the translation whether it was just a fancily embroidered coat, but the traditional take is a coat of many colors, which would have taken a lot of work. Remember, everything was sewn by hand in these days. But he had all of this stuff. He had his father's favoritism. He had being the son of the favorite wife. Then he had these dreams showing his great destiny. And so he came to be resented by his brothers. And it's easy to assume that he did little to keep them from becoming jealous of him. What I mean is, he was probably pretty braggadocious about this. But the thing is, the Lord has a way of humbling people. And we see how his humility comes in this portion. He was going to visit his brothers while they were pasturing their flocks, and they all conspired against him. They said, "We should kill him. We should kill him and get rid of him." This seems such an extreme thing for sibling rivalry, but you can really see how in this little thing, this bitterness and this jealousy, not only the jealousy from the brothers, but also the jealousy they inherited, because these were the sons of the less loved wives. And so you see this coming out in this behavior, this desire to kill him. So, the one that sticks up for him, ironically enough, is Reuben. Now, Reuben was the oldest brother, and as the oldest, he was the one who was supposed to get the preferential treatment. He was the one who was supposed to be treated the best. And yet Reuben was the one who sought to defend Joseph. So they decided to sell him to a group of traveling Ishmaelites as a slave, and he eventually became a slave in Egypt. He was bought by Potiphar, the chief of the guards. And that's where our story picks up again in chapter 39, verses 1 through 4. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. Just like his father Israel, Joseph was blessed in all that he did. The work of his hands yielded much fruit. And Potiphar saw this. And so Potiphar, similar to the way Laban was taking advantage of Jacob, wanted to take advantage of Joseph's skill, wanted to take advantage of the fact that Joseph, everything he did was blessed by the Lord. And so he put him high up in his house. It says he was so important that Potiphar only worried about what he was going to eat. He didn't have to worry about anything. Now the problem for Joseph in my reading of this thing, and I could be wrong, the only way to settle it is with a time-traveling DeLorean. As this success came, the pride returned. Then Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph. And when he refused, she claimed that he had assaulted her. And he ended up in jail. But this time of being brought as low as you can get, was the time that Joseph learned true humility. Jail broke his pride. In chapter 40, verses 1 through 4, it says, "Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended to them. They continued for some time in custody." So Joseph was put in a situation where he had to take care of other people. He had to act in a way that acknowledged there are people in this world more important than him. More important than the favorite son. More important than the boy whose father got him a special coat. More important than the guy who was the second highest ranking person in the house of a high-ranking Egyptian official. He had to acknowledge that other people mattered. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 8, it says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others as more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interests of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Messiah Yeshua, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient, even to the point of death, even death on an execution stake." You see, Joseph learned the truth about how to defeat pride. Service poisons pride. Humbling yourself in service takes pride away from you. It ebbs it away. And this time, he was able to do this. One of the things Yeshua also said was if anyone wants to be great in the kingdom of heaven, he must become the servant of all. He must humble himself in service. Joseph was used to everything being in service to him. But now he was put in a situation where he had to serve others. And we see that this attitude, this lifestyle of service, had such a profound effect on him that when he saw that the cupbearer and the baker were distressed, he was able to notice it because he cared enough about what was going on in their lives. He wasn't so wrapped up in his own pride that he couldn't see the problems other people were dealing with. And so he asked them, and they told him about their dreams. And he knew, not by my greatness, but by the Lord's greatness, I will tell you what these dreams mean. And the interpretation of those dreams eventually led to him being released in prison. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Find out how Joseph's story ends next week. I've been the Messianic Torah dude. Shalom.
Well, honey, that was my dream. What do you think?
Let's go back to bed.